Welcome to the Land Investing Business Secret Podcast, where each short episode we talk about the strategies, experiences, and the tools to help you launch, grow, and scale your land business. Learn how to find freedom within your own business, find out ways to build consistency in your processes, and hear how other everyday land investors are winning so you can get to the next step closer to building your dream life through your land business. And I'm your host of the Land Investing Business Secrets Podcast by Pebble, Jesse Kwong. Hey, how's it going? It's Jesse here of the Land Investing Business Secret Podcast by Pebble. Welcome to the end of 2022 and welcome into 2023. This episode is our year-end episode, and what we've done this time around is we've compiled 22 of our favorite lessons that we've learned on this show. So you're going to see a compilation of 22 snippets from all different episodes across this past year in 2022. I hope you get to take as much as you can out of this episode as we condensed all these lessons across the year. This podcast episode is brought to you by Pebble. If you are looking to finally streamline, systemize, or get started with a strong foundation to grow your land investing business and run it like a business, make sure you head over to pebblerei.com, hit the book a demo, and jump on a one-on-one call here with me at Pebble. Other than that, I am wishing you a great start to 2023, and I hope you get to apply some of these lessons here learned on this podcast episode. Cheers. I'm not going to butcher here. So what is sort of the framework behind Profit First? What is that? What is sort of the fundamental concepts here? If you can sort of summarize that for us.
There are two main points. There's the mindset and then the practical application. I'll go over the mindset first. We've been fed as entrepreneurs, or maybe by accountants, bookkeepers, or numbers people, that the formula for business, and we're real estate investors, so we love our formulas, but it's sales minus expenses equals profit. Yeah. So meaning I make a sale, I spend, and I pay everyone else and their mother, and then hopefully I have profit at the end of the day or the end of the year, or it's some event that happens sometime, that I get some payout. That's what we're hoping as the entrepreneur. But the Profit First formula is sales minus profit equals expenses, meaning I make a sale, I transfer my profit first, and then what I have left over is to make sure that the business is healthy and growing and, funding the actual expenses of the business. So that's where the big radical mindset shift in that formula, and that's the core of Profit First. It's making sure you're profitable, and every deal, every interaction, every single sale that you do, every single rent check that you deposit, every single seller finance deal, whatever that you're doing, then you're profitable. But I also feel like we've heard that message, though, as real estate investors. If you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or if you've read like Richest Man in Babylon, or a lot of these famous books that they tout at masterminds, that they say, like, pay yourself first. Those books give that concept, or a portion of all I have is mine to keep, or whatever that is. Right. And that's why I feel like Profit First, with the foundational core of it, takes it a step further to say, here's how you actually keep more of your money. I'm not talking about just saving on taxes. I'm not talking about just that. It's like, how do you actually manage your money to be able to have more money instead of just spending and feeling like you're like overwhelmed all the time with your expenses. So that's the second part of Profit First, is making that formula and making the pay yourself first message a reality. This is how you buy back your freedom. You don't buy your freedom by investing everything and hoping and praying that nothing horrible happens, so that way you can one day have this huge payout, and like just, that grind that you're doing all the time. No, there's a way to have your cake and eat it too, to be able to buy your freedom now and build a profitable business and make profit a habit inside of your business and not just some event.
If my audience were to, if our listeners were to take away three or a couple things from this, where can they start?
Well, I give 3 steps in the book, but I'm going to give you just one step that has kind of some sub-steps underneath of it, that if you do this from the podcast, you will start to see the effects immediately. So here we go. What do you do? The first thing I want to talk about, though, with this step is one of the biggest mistakes I see with real estate investors and how we manage our money, because I'm still a real estate investor, so I want myself in there when I was first starting, is we have one big bank account that we see, and where income comes in, expenses go out, and it's just a cash salad that you're just tossing all the time. Money comes in, money goes out. It's like you're just You're rich one day, you have 100,000 in there because you just got some private lending, and then the next day your payroll hits and your marketing expenses hit and all this, and then you're down to $0, and you're like, where did all my money go? So that's where this is one of the biggest mistakes we see, because that leaves the entrepreneur, because let's just be honest here, entrepreneurs, real estate investors don't look at QuickBooks, they look at their bank accounts. That's just how we operate when it comes to our money and our cash. So I totally get it, totally get that. So how do we leverage that then? How do we leverage what we're already doing, looking at those bank accounts, to manage the cash that's flowing through our business and put us in control? So here's the big step is, I am also a fan of big epic sagas, big epic stories like Star Wars and Harry Potter. They've got like these three main heroes that are always pushing the story forward for good, like Luke, Han, Leia, making sure that good wins in the end. So your business, though, is your epic story. It's your epic saga. You are literally living it out right now because you chose to be a business owner. You wanted to be a part of that elite group. So what do you need? You need three main heroes. You need a golden trio, like they call that the golden trio in the movies. You need a golden trio of bank accounts for you, the business owner, to make sure you're winning in the end. So we can separate out that one instead of just having this one big account. So what are those three bank accounts? Number one, a profit account, an actual profit account. Number two, an owner's compensation account. And number three, an owner's tax account. And I always get asked, what's the difference between the profit bank account and the owner's comp? Profit is something you take quarterly for the reward of having a successful business and running a cash profitable business. It's for the blood, sweat, and tears, for trading in the 40-hour work week, for the 80 hours, working for yourself. And it's like making sure you feel like the business is actually giving you what you wanted, not just what you needed, but what you wanted. So that profit account is something you draw from quarterly, where the owner's compensation is if you're in the business working day to day, you should be paying yourself. This account fulfills the pay yourself first principle of making sure that you're paying yourself consistently. Can you give yourself a monthly salary or a bi-weekly, or can you give yourself at least something consistently throughout the year, so that way you're being compensated for the work you do? That's the owner's compensation. It's basically however you take your salary, W-2 or distributions or whatnot. The owner's tax, that's all about not having to scramble at the end of the year where it's tax time. Woohoo, here we got to pay our taxes. Let me go sell 3 more deals right now just to cover this bill, or let me be put on a payment plan for the next 50 years.
Now, is there anything that you would like to warn others who are thinking, or not warn, just kind of give heads up to others who are thinking about trekking down this path of using a call center or a call service like yours?
Yeah, I think it's related to what I was just saying, which is you got to understand the limitations. You probably have someone on there that doesn't understand the land business. And so as they're interacting, they're not going to be either taking advantage of some of their information they're getting and having the right sort of follow-ups, or recording it the way you'd want necessarily. So you do have a relatively untrained person with respect to land. So that's a downside. And I would just say you're going to be bouncing around to different receptionists. So some are going to be better than others. So your quality control is kind of out of your control. So those are the things to be aware of. But on the whole, I think it's a big step forward from using voicemail.
That's awesome to hear. Just to sum things up, some of the key things that I took away from this episode is, Sean, it looks like using an answering service has helped you buy back a lot more time. You don't need to hang around the phone. You don't need to do any qualifying. You don't need to waste time doing that. And it seems like it totally, going with this service, an answering service, totally outweighs all those things. So that's a key thing. One of the key things that you also, I think, mentioned was the fact to make sure you ask if there is a second property. It looks like this has served you very well, just having a chat with them to see if they have other properties available, making sure you include that into your script. And then I guess third of all is test your script. Listen to it like you did, call yourself, and see how you like it. And I guess as you sort of get those leads coming in, iterate along the way until you get to the point where you like it. And sorry, go ahead.
I would add on and take advantage of the automation that you all have just provided in Pebble.
I
upload my
appreciate that,
information.
Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that we continue to try to strive is to kind of help streamline and then help with automation, so we can centralize that business, allow you to run it from anywhere easily. That's really interesting. So let's come to that marketing piece again. You focus on the marketing side. What other things have you tried that are, would you say, are not traditional, that have brought you some traction as well?
I would say like the first thing would definitely be TikTok, right? And now we're experimenting with different things like blogs and YouTube videos. And there's a few, even writing a book for our customers on like the things you should know before buying land. So, but the thing I would say is the best thing that's helped us is find one or two things that we found some traction in and we're good at, and really maximize that. Now there's two other accounts that are separate from my main account, that they create the content and they post it, and all the traffic is headed straight to our website. So as we were kind of able to mature, we were kind of able to take over that niche on that platform. But when we were starting, it was just one or two specific things, and integrating things like Zapier, using Klaviyo for email marketing. So when someone joins our interest list on our website, for the next 1 year, once a week, they're going to get an email. And it's not going to be a sales email about like, buy this property or whatever. That will be like the campaigns. But for once a week for a whole year, they're going to hear from us and they're going to get educational content. And then we do SMS marketing. So there's a lot of like these different tools that traditional businesses use. And I was just like, why can't we do this for the land business? And it's been really helpful.
I want to come back to the actual strategy itself. What would you say? I mean, you said it helped you to get scaled up, the fastest way possible for you guys, especially. What would you say is sort of if you could narrow down on 1 to 3 different things that going your approach has made land investing very easy? What would those things be, or what are sort of the biggest advantages if it's given you to focus on marketing?
I don't have to worry. The first thing I would say is I don't have to worry about how the mailers are going to do, or, it's more consistent. And now that we've opened up actually like how I've been purchasing from wholesalers, now I was actually thinking, and we actually launched it last week, where there are other land companies now that we're going to supply. We're going to offer like, so the wholesale side of our business now is we're going to, have a land arb side. So if they want to purchase in bulk and they don't want to put up the cash to buy all these properties, we'll owner finance it to you, right? And that has been really interesting because number one, it gives you crazy leverage, right? Instead of spending $1,000 to buy one property, you're putting up $1,000 to buy 20. And, so your risk is a lot lower. So the second thing I would say is my risk was lowered, right? Instead of trying to figure out how I can get $100,000 to go buy all these properties, I'm buying that same amount of property with very little out of my pocket. Yes, I'm not going to make the same amount of margin, but when you look at it on like a return on investment basis for every dollar that you put out, it becomes very there's like an exponential return compared to if you were trying to buy 100% equity in every single property, but rather just keeping an option to purchase that property.
I don't know if you want to go into the details about that.
Yeah, let's do it. Why don't you share us what that was like?
Yeah, so the way buyer did, and then he knew the property wasn't worth $40K, but because he was planning to build a house on it and put it back on the market for crazy amount of gains, he decided to take the bond and slap it towards the construction loan, and with that he was able to close without not much paying for the bond, upfront.
Oh, wow!
So I think he somehow figured out a way to pay for the bond once he sell the house. This is one construction buyer. So I was like, wow, that's really cool. And then that's something that we learn out of that and still stay with us. And eventually in the future, who knows, maybe we want to develop a lot.
Sure.
And then if we come across something like that, we have a tool in our belt that we can.
It's interesting that he was willing to share that with you. Now,
he shared that with us because he said, "Did you have more lots to sell me?"
Yeah.
So he wanted me to bring in more, but I haven't had the chance to make it work for him. But I asked him, I was like, "Hey, would you mind sharing? How were you able to pay for that?" And that's how he said, I went to a local bank. Most banks won't let you do that, but a local bank will lend you the money and will be okay with like tying those bonds into that.
Interesting.
It was really interesting. Yeah. So because he has that tool and he's like willing to buy more from me and pay me my assignment fee in the future. So that was really cool because now I have a connection to also and a buyer ready to go.
And more importantly, we know how to close on a problematic property like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have a tool, and then I was like, wow, I think that's the most priceless value we got out of that whole experience. Sure, we didn't make a lot. What, 2-3K?
3K.
Yeah, on an assignment fee, but that lesson alone is priceless, and I'm sure
that's exactly it. I think like
one day you will give us a lot of return.
Yeah, coming across these things and you're still coming out in the plus, but the bigger part of this is now you have the confidence and understanding how to deal with these kind of properties, which I think, like you said, is truly priceless. Yeah. Now, you didn't talk much about the seller. There was nothing much too tricky about the process with that, was there?
No, it was huge. With this seller, he pretty much gave up on the property when we reached out to him. And he was just waiting for that notice that, hey, your property foreclosed. He was pretty much waiting for that. But we got to him just on time with our marketing, and we were able to save his property and let it get
sometimes it's all about timing. Like just this is truly all about timing. That what happened. Now. Out of curiosity, did he originally purchase that property? What, did he inherit it, or how did he?
Yeah, he purchased it. He said he mentioned something that he wanted to do something with it eventually, but I guess he got caught up with life expenses. Yeah. Everybody has their story. Yeah.
Totally. One other thing I'd love to ask you guys, as you guys are sort of trekking this journey. And you're sort of starting out, what would you say, you've learned so far as somebody who's getting started? And there's going to be a lot of people that are, learning about land, exploring land, and are maybe they're getting started, maybe they're not yet, but, you're still fresh in there and you have a lot of your new learnings here. What can you sort of share with some of those that are just getting started or getting into the space within their first year?
Yeah, I would say definitely use the right CRM. Especially Pebble.
I appreciate the flag. Thank you.
We do wish we would have come across that a year ago and not lie. I mean, that really is.
I say that with all my heart because, I spent so much time printing, stuffing envelopes, sending out offers.
Neighborhood letters.
Yeah, neighborhood letters. Yeah. But with Pebble, it's just couple clicks and you're done, and you can send as much as offers within a matter of 10 minutes. And to me, that's time saving is amazing. And I love that how everything is just so easy for us to stay organized and we can see everything in front of us. I would say definitely use the right tool for starting out. And the second one is to never give up. Don't give up, because it took us 20 months to do our first deal. And I'll never forget. That's a story that will stay with us as long as we live. And then we never gave up because I knew that one day we're going to close. And one deal is all it takes, So,
it is. And good for you.
Nonstop.
Yeah. And we had a mentor at the time. He hammered on that topic as well. He said, first deal is the hardest to do. But as soon as you get the first one done, it gets easier after that. So,
isn't that weird?
Don't give up.
I wonder, do they, is there a point do you actually, if they offered you a bundle of say 5 properties and you find one is like, okay, it's off a cliff or, a problem property, do you still take it in and you sort of negotiate that and use that to your negotiation power? Or do you not bother taking that in? Like, how do you sort of handle, odd properties that come in that package as well?
Well, so I always steer clear of things that have like enormous liens or huge holding costs. But if it's like a weird property, you got to understand when you're buying in bulk, you have to be willing to work with the other land company. You can't just be like cherry picking from the from the best of the best, right? Because yeah, you're providing them liquidity, but you also need to. It's kind of like it needs to go both ways, right? Because if you build a reputation where you're like taking the best lots and not, I always just give them the benefit of the doubt. I trust them, and they put together a good package for me. The first deals, you might not win crazy amounts, but guess what? Once you've built that relationship and kind of that dynamic where things work out for you, you can. You'll start getting really good deals, right? The first deal, I remember there's one guy, last year we spent about $250,000 with them. And when I first started, it was the same type of inventory. I probably paid double what I'm paying now. But because of our relationship and how we started doing business together and becoming valuable to each other, you start getting a lot of like good opportunities and deals.
And I guess you play this for the long run too. I mean, as you mentioned, you're providing value to each other. There's an obvious, line of value to each other. A relationship really just forms out of there. And does this happen for you that you've got sort of, for lack of better terms, somebody who's fetching you properties now? Do you have relationships like that with other land companies?
I do. The person that I just mentioned that we worked with last year, it's crazy. I bought I think 10 parcels from him to start. And I probably bought a few hundred parcels from him last year. And the way our relationship is, like, when you're starting new with the working with for example, I'll talk about the sales side, right? Because now we're starting to sell wholesale to other land investors and companies. Before, when he started, I was like, we're sending small amounts, deposits, and waiting for the deeds to be registered and all of that. And you should do that, right? To protect yourself and make sure that the person you're working with can actually deliver on what they're promising. Now he texts me literally, he goes, I have 100 parcels in this area for this price. Do you want it? And we just wire him the funds. And so you will build those relationships eventually as you start to trust people. For example, like I flew out to Texas and, I stayed with them for a few days. So we have that kind of, So, and he's come here, he's met my family, our families have met and stuff like that. So when you have that kind of relationship, you're able to start getting deals, and the speed at which you do deals is a lot faster.
I love that.
Okay, well, how about I talk about the challenges? Because I don't remember particularly. Maybe
no problem.
I'll share some challenges. I think the first thing is the mindset, right? If someone's not currently selling in bulk, when you first call them, the first couple of deals is going to be the most challenging, right? Because you don't know that person, they don't know you, and you're buying a lot all at once, and so there's like that little bit of friction on those first few deals. So that's a challenge, right? If you can overcome that, that's great. And number two is doing due diligence and research, right? So like if you're buying packages in bulk, you want to make sure that what you're buying is you're on board with it. Like, you know what I mean? You understand what you're buying so that your relationship doesn't get damaged, right? So let's say a land investor sells you something and it turns out to be not what you thought it was going to be. Like the most expensive thing in this is burnt bridges, right? And and because it's a small industry, and if people, and like that's the first thing, that's the one thing I make sure is I do my research, and I always understand the value of the relationships in this business. So do everything that you possibly can to avoid burnt bridges. Because I don't want that. So anything that I buy, I make sure to do my research. And if we have a conflict, we work it out. We don't like go crazy and like start yelling and doing all this other stuff. It's just you resolve the issues and you just do your research so you're not surprised and you don't let your emotions get in the way.
Outcome is the property is now on the back burner. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm still talking to the seller every couple weeks, keeping him up to date on any progress I've made, who I've talked to, what's kind of going on with things. And he's been really, really understanding and really accommodating. But yeah, we're trying to get some home runs, trying to get some things in the pipeline that we can get in and out and make happen. But yeah, I don't want to give up on this because I love the seller. He's a great guy, and I think there's a deal there.
Yeah, and you do mention, I did shoot you a message about that. But one of the things that you mentioned is he's also paying taxes on this, and it's coming to foreclosure. So is that going to happen soon? Is that playing a factor in sort of getting this rushed as well?
So he is definitely tired of paying the taxes on it. He brought it out of foreclosure a couple of years ago because it was a few days away, and he paid off the taxes and has been keeping it current. But yeah, he just doesn't want to be dealing with it anymore. So I think that is a pain point for him, and that's something we're trying to help him out with.
So I want to summarize this, Matt. If somebody were to come across, or if you were able to document on this problem property that you had, what were some of the steps that you've taken so far that others could possibly follow as well?
Absolutely. So I think having a team, whether that be other investors who are like, yeah, shoot me any property, I'll have a look at it, I'll see what I can do or see if I know anyone. The community is huge, and networking in this industry is huge. So I think having other investors, definitely having an attorney or a closing company who can look at things on the back end, as far as seeing is it the deed, what's going on with that. And then also, yeah, having a realtor was super helpful just to get the opinion of value. And also it looked like it had access, but he was like, yeah, no legal access. So just having people.
Actually, let me stop you there about your real estate agent. Was it a real estate agent that you have a current relationship already with?
Yeah, so he actually gave us opinions of value for the property that we ended up wholesaling. And had I taken that down and listed it, I would have used him to sell it with. But because we had to wholesale it, we didn't get that far.
Got you. But this is someone that I guess you're going to continue to work with.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking for those relationships, whether it's with a realtor or an attorney or whoever, that we can just keep working together and have it be a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else I'm missing here in terms of your checklist on how you can sort of go about dealing with problem properties like this?
So I think the biggest stopping point for me has been the due diligence on the research of finding the lineage, the family lineage, and being able to take that to the attorney. Just with everything going on, sending out mailers, following up with other sellers, making sure my systems are all staying up to date. It's just hard to prioritize that task of like, all right, let's dig deep on Ancestry. Let's find the family tree and all that stuff. I think one day I would love to learn how to do that better. But for me right now, that's just a lot of time and a lot of energy that I don't have at the moment.
Totally.
And I really feel like the other side of the coin of success is managing money. We all typically, listeners of this podcast, make our money by flipping land. That's the means that we generate revenue, but it's what we do with that revenue that really makes a big impact on our lifestyle and our like whatever you want to spend your money on, right? Whatever you value. So
yeah, totally. Well, taking the concept from profit first, how have you practically implemented this into your business? What is this all about? Like, you're saying it's sort of a layman's term of accounting, and a lot of us as entrepreneurs, now I can't say everybody, but someone like myself, I like to just stay busy. But how do you implement this? What is this strategy all about?
Yeah, man. So it's really about, I would say, budgeting without budgeting, because I hate budgeting. Like budgeting feels like a straitjacket, and it does not feel like financial freedom. It feels like financial prison to me. So, it's not good. So it's a way to kind of trick your brain into budgeting without having to, count every penny. What the main, I guess, cornerstone of the system is having multiple bank accounts that serve different functions within your business. Yes. So generally speaking, you're looking at an income account, a profit account, an owner's comp account, a tax account, and then an OpEx account. So the premise of Profit First is that profit actually needs to be taken first. So whenever revenue comes into your business, what traditional accounting says is that profit is expenses minus revenue equals profit. And that's not what Profit First teaches. It's the opposite. What it is it's revenue minus profit equals your operating expenses, like what you have to actually run your business. And being intentional about, like, you're almost automating profitability. From day one, when you have this system, any dollar that comes in, a certain percentage of it's going to go into an account called profit that is a savings account, typically at a different bank than you normally bank, hidden away so that you never see it. And then once a quarter, you pay yourself like a quarterly bonus.
And, I went into it guns a-blazing in the sense that I guess I thought when I sent out my first 600 mailers, I was going to get all these calls and everything was going to happen real fast. And when things didn't happen real fast, I sent out more mail and I sent out more mail. I ended up sending out over 10,000 mailers during the first quarter. Yeah. So I really got the chance to both make mistakes and then experience what this is like in terms of interacting with sellers and buying properties.
Yeah. So fast forward to today. You've been doing this for a few months now. What did you learn along the way? Let's talk about some of those mistakes. What were some of the common mistakes, or bigger mistakes you kind of ran into along the way?
Well, I'd say the first mistake that I made was mispricing my early mailers. I was really anchored on this idea that I could buy property at between 10 and 20%. So I got a lot. I got a lot of hate calls during that time. I think the other mistake that I made was thinking that I could somehow handle the calls myself. That people would leave a message and then I would be able to return those calls. 90% of people just don't want to leave a message. So very quickly, based on your advice early on, engaged Pat Live to answer my calls because I'm working a regular job during the day and then I can return those after hours or on the weekends. Yeah.
You seem to just enjoy the process. There's got to be some parts of the business you don't like. I love sort of talking about the grimmer side of things. What kind of things do you not like about land investing?
I think that if there was one thing I don't like, it would be the hate messages. And then sometimes I hear back even from the Pat Live people, how they were abused by somebody. And it's like, I knew this would happen, right? I learned about it in my training, but it's amazing to me how upset some people get just because they've gotten a piece of mail from me offering them some money for their property. So, I dislike that. But, I quickly overcome that by seeing and enjoying the interactions I have with people who are really happy that I came along and offered them something for their property, and I'm taking something a burden off their plate, and they can move forward and do something different. So, so that's probably what I would say. I just you get to see that come out in people. I guess that is one of the benefits of having Pat Live. My wife thought she was going to originally kind of answer my calls for me, and after she heard the first voice message come from hate, she goes, "I'm not answering these phone calls. No way. These people don't know our home address, do they?"
It's probably like the most common thing. In fact, like I don't know if you know this, but inside of Pebble and we've got a functionality. You can check this out later, Mike. But you can actually blacklist people so you don't mail them twice. It's I know it's one of those things like, can we just not ever mail one people in the future? So we do have a blacklisting function that'll save you.
I need to figure that out because I do get the messages, right? Take me off your list. And I just kind of delete those, and I'm hoping I don't mail them back. But
no, you can mark them now. So whenever you do your next mailing, nothing will ever go out to them. So you don't need to waste postage or be concerned with them. But
that's great to know.
Josh, I want to know, what are some of the more common mistakes you see? You know, you being in the industry for a while, you've seen other photos. What would you say are some of the more common mistakes? If you can even relate that back to specifically for land investors and their photos, can you give me like 3 sort of more common mistakes that people need to watch out for when it comes to their land photos?
Probably the number one common mistake when it comes to land is not using a drone, because usually land, it's going to be a large area that we need to show off. And if somebody's just going to show up with a camera and they're going to be at ground level, it's really hard to get perspective. So we're still seeing that. Surprisingly today you can go to walk to Walmart and pick up a drone and get some amazing imagery. But if you're going to be having this hired out professionally, look for somebody that is a drone operator. And not only that, but they're licensed. You want to hire somebody that has the Part 107 drone license, and that allows them to legally fly on your property. So make sure to keep an eye out for that.
Common mistakes, we talked about drone. Any other common mistakes that we're seeing out there?
Ooh, common mistakes. Probably... You probably see this less in the world of land real estate, but we see this a lot in residential real estate, is people that just want FaceTime on the camera. We have a lot of realtors that just love talking. I mean, special breed. They're probably the only people that have their faces on business cards, right? Well, keep in mind, the one mistake that we see is that people are more focused on maybe the specific thing being sold, and maybe they lose sight of the fact that the content is actually for a potential buyer. So that's really the mindset we need to keep, because we have a lot of sellers who, and let's say, for example, on a land listing, you might have a small structure or a cabin or some sort of house or a feature that maybe the current owner is really excited about and they really want to show off. But remember, it's not about them, it's about a potential buyer. So that's the mindset that we need to have, is to put on our buyer's hat and to actually show off and communicate as quickly as possible what they're going to be getting in the deal.
How much appreciation can somebody expect to force?
Yeah, so I target 100. I want to double it. You can sometimes you force more, sometimes you force less, but approximately right around double. For me, and you'll see, like with the cheaper, less expensive properties, it might not be worth it to you. Even doubling it, right? If it's only worth $20,000, doubling it to you at the cost of subdividing might not make sense, right? So there's certainly that like minimum, value, but I target 100% on forcing the appreciation.
Why subdivide? Why split up a parcel into more parcels? Doesn't this just add more complexity and time to actually flip a piece of property then?
In this hot sellers market where acquisitions are a little harder for some people, if you can create, take one acquisition and create 4 or 5 dispositions, properties to sell, you're in good shape, right? So I think that's what a lot of people are interested in, is kind of adding that play to their playbook, right? Or somebody's moved from beginner to intermediate or advanced, and they're really looking for a way to add value versus just capturing value or capturing equity. Right. So there's a lot of times the appreciation is significantly worth it. Ironically, the other thing that first when I started doing it, it wasn't for the cash flip or forcing a ton of appreciation. I was kind of all in at the time on seller financing and building this node empire, right? So I was looking at it from the perspective of, for example, with this 40-acre parcel, I could probably sell it on payments and create one note, $300 a month or something, right? If I split it up into 4 parcels, in my mind, I could sell that in 4 notes. That I now just created 4 notes out of one acquisition, right? So like $250 a parcel, or $1,000 a month in notes. So for me, that's what's interesting. You can work it both ways. If you're all in on seller financing, it's a good play. Or if you're just trying to force appreciation, there's potential at times, to force 6 figures plus, on one deal, and then just cash in the chips, right? And really bring in a lot of money, that you can put back into your marketing.
If somebody were to go down this path and add value or subdivide on a piece of property, other than time, and I'd like to know, how much time should they be thinking about? Other than time, what else are they actually losing out on? Like, why would somebody not want to do this?
Yeah, I think most of the time it's either lack of knowledge and that they're just not familiar with it yet. And so there's the fear of the unknown. I think that plays into it significantly. And then there's the time element as well, like you mentioned, because that's going to take a little bit longer. So for the most basic type of subdivision that I'm talking about, you really have to figure, probably in the realm of like 3 to 4 months just to get through that actual subdivision process. During that time, though, you could really start your marketing. If you have a land agent that you're working with, they can start their marketing. So you can really kind of overlap some of those processes so that way you're streamlining things as much as possible. But I think really it comes down to time and knowledge. But really, once people understand it and they kind of get their feet wet and a couple of those under their belt, they start to realize that it's not as challenging as they may have thought. Ultimately, what I tell people is that you don't have to be the subject matter expert. You just need to be able to be a good project manager. You need to be able to manage the professional services.
So let's go back to that second one, zoning. Yeah. What typically do people rezone their property for?
Sure. Yeah. It's basically the most common thing that we would see in land space would be seeing like an agriculturally zoned property that we deal with all the time, right? We'll see an ag zone property and we want to be able to sell this to a builder ultimately. You're going to rezone it from agricultural to a residential land use. So you might see that as like an R1 zone or whatever it happens to be in that jurisdiction. So that's the most like common transition as far as zoning is concerned. But it could also be more subtle than that too. It could be it could be from like a zone that allows for a fourplex type property, and it could actually be rezoned to something that allows for, multifamily, 5+ units or something like that. So sometimes there's subtle zoning changes, but those subtle changes actually add massive value because now it's important to remember that, property and land is valued in part based on what its potential actually is. And so what we're doing is we're changing the potential of that property. And that's, again, why we're actually getting paid as adding value to it.
If I were to jump into doing infill, like what should I, what are some of the signs that it's a good area to work out of? What would you typically suggest when it comes to looking for a pocket like yours?
Absolutely. One of the key things you want to do is go on Zillow, and you basically want to target either that county or that city, and you want to pay attention to what we call the active to sold ratio. Okay. And basically what that means is, let me give you an example. If I went on Zillow and I put in for sale, I put in price 10, let's just say 10 or $100,000, and I put just land, and I put in Charlotte, North Carolina, it's going to say 19 is active. If I did sold within the last 12 months, it says 172 sold. So that gives me a gauge that there could be some demand warrant that I dig a little deeper and I pick up the phone and get on the phone with the people who's buying these lots. But that is one of the indicators, I would say, that there's a demand on a lot. Now, if you got 172 active and 4 sold, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You don't go there.
So you mentioned a couple of things there. First of all, the timeliness of things getting closed. Why do things get closed a lot quicker with infill lots?
Because of the price point of these lots. The price points are typically $10,000 to $50,000. There's usually more builders that want the lot than there's lots available. So the buyer pool is huge, and I guess when you're an expert wholesaler or you've been in the business a while, you can kind of set your terms to what you want, and either they honor it or they don't. And a lot of times they honor it because, again, at the end of the day, my job is to wow the seller with, my time and professionalism. And if I can close them in 2 days or 3 days and everyone else has promised them 45, 60 days, I call that good news they can use.
The only thing that really drains on somebody's momentum is time and no wins. So you're going through a 4-month period of no wins at that time. What kind of got you across that?
Yeah, great question. I guess the first thing I'll say is I'm probably a little too stubborn sometimes. And so I had told myself I refused to be a one-hit wonder. You know, it was like, okay, I got one deal and I was really excited about it. And I told probably way too many people about it in my personal life. I'm starting this business, I'm doing this thing, you know. And then it was like, yeah, no, I refuse to be a one-hit wonder. And I kept listening to interviews with other investors. And I was like, okay, there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that do this for a living, right? There are deals out there. America is massive. There's a lot of land in this country. I know I can figure this out. It's just a matter of time. Yeah. And as I look back on it, you know, if we're being honest, it's really just a function of marketing. Like if you send out enough mail, you will always get deals, in my opinion. Well, I say that there's a couple of caveats there, right? I think kind of the key metrics are marketing outbound, and then actually following up with your sellers, right? But if you're sending out mail, following up with people, comping accurately, getting out offers, you're going to get deals, right?
Yeah.
And I've done a majority of my deals this year, I think over 25 in Florida. And so Florida is a very competitive market. So I don't bring that up to brag. It's just more of a, hey, there are deals to be had if you want them. Go get them, you know?
What else are you using in your sort of tech stack to kind of do what you got to do to really scale up your business here?
Yeah, good question. So on the due diligence side, you know, I guess from pulling data, I'm using DataTree and Priced. I use both of them. I like DataTree as a research tool a lot, you know, being able to search up parcels on like a GIS map. I've also got MapRight, of course. I check wetlands and floodplains on there and some other stuff. MapRight's got all kinds of cool stuff. If you're not on MapRight, I don't know what you're doing, but it's fantastic. Aside from that, from a phone service, now I'm using OpenPhone, and OpenPhone's got a ton of functionality in there. Especially if you've got any kind of a team, it's great to be able to track that. And you can actually upload, you know, contacts into OpenPhone. You can also upload them into Pebble. So it's really nice when those leads come in. You know, you're able to see who these people are if you're skip tracing at all. It's another thing when I skip trace data, because I do some cold texting and some cold calling. I'm using DirectSkip as my skip tracing vendor there. Aside from that, I can't think of anything extraordinary.
Before you stop this episode or hit the next episode, I want to personally thank you for listening to this episode of the Land Investing Business Secrets podcast by Pebble. If you found this helpful, we greatly appreciate any awesome reviews and ratings on whichever platform you are listening to this on. And if you have 2 minutes and wanted to step it up even more and help others, feel free to share this in other Facebook groups or pages or any communities, giving others a heads up of the Land Investing Business Secrets podcast or the specific episode that may help them on their land investing journey. Once again, thanks so much for listening, and catch you on our next episode.